Hello, everybody. I'm Hannah from AnswerThePublic. So this is the third webinar in our series. Thanks for signing up again today. It's great to have you all here. A quick reminder of what our webinar series is all about for everybody that's new. So every month we're talking to industry experts from SEO to creative, PR to content about how search data can help you read people's minds and make better business decisions. So that's what it's all about. So just a little note, actually, just to let you know. So we will be showing you tools that will help you to become a search listening expert, including lots of different ways that you can use AnswerThePublic and other tools as well to get more from your data. But it isn't an AnswerThePublic tutorial. We have got one of those over on our YouTube channel, so do check that one out if that's what you're looking for. But yeah, so we are actually going to be showing you a little preview of a new feature later on today as well. So that is quite exciting. That should be new to everyone. So yeah, we'll be chatting about that a bit later on. So those of you who have been on our last webinars, there might be a few points that we kind of repeat for the benefit of those people that are new today, but there's also a lot of new content and lots to learn. So yeah, really looking forward to today's session. So today we're talking to Ginny Dietrich. So Ginny is an author, she's a CEO, and she's a founder of Spin Sucks as well. So welcome, Ginny.
Thank you.
And Sophie is back. So Sophie is a regular guest on our webinars. Sophie is the originator of the search listening technique. And Sophie is also an author. You can check her book out. It's called Audience Insight in the Age of Google. So yeah, we'll be looking for questions from you guys on the floor. So we've got about half an hour, I think, at the end to answer those questions. So if you could send those through, I'll be keeping an eye on those as we do the session today. So this session is all about reputation. We mentioned last month that we were going to be doing a deep dive into this because it's such a big topic in its own right. And particularly actually with everything that's going on in the world right now.
There's nothing going on. What are you talking about?
It really does.
It's totally normal to have your kids sitting next to you.
I love it that you've got a helper, Ginny. It's great.
You think even the dog is there? Geez.
Whole crew.
Brilliant. So yeah, today's conversation is all about how search listening can help you track and manage your reputation online. So yeah, before we get started, Ginny and Sophie, it'd be great if you guys could introduce yourself. Ginny, perhaps you want to go first?
Yes. So I am the founder and author of Spin Sucks. And it's funny because I was asking Hannah some questions and I said, you know, how do you want to do this and how do you want to do that? And she goes, well, just like you talked about in your book. And I was like, right, I wrote a book. I can go back to the book. Thank you. And actually the book started as a blog and then it became a book and a podcast. And now it offers professional development for communicators. As well, I have run and grown a PR firm for the last 15 years and am co-author of Marketing in the Round and co-host of the Agency Leadership Podcast.
Wow.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sophie, do you want to intro you?
I will, yeah. So, I mean, if anyone's been on any of our other webinars, they will hopefully be a bit familiar with me now. So, for anyone who has not heard me speak before, I'm Sophie. Hi, I'm here today to talk about search listening, which is a new technique, I suppose, for gathering consumer insight, which I'm super passionate about. I guess I've developed it over my sort of 10 plus years working in digital marketing. So I still work at a digital agency here in Brighton in the UK. I'm the audience strategy director there. PropellerNet is the agency. So I spend a lot of my time trying to really understand people, I suppose. And
I like reading their minds. I like that.
Yeah, it's great.
I like it.
I originally trained as a journalist, which is where I always think my sort of nosy or curious is probably a better way to put it, but that streak comes from. So I trained as a journalist and then over the last sort of 11 odd years now have spent time in PR, creative, and now planning in digital. And yeah, I'm fascinated by people and I think there's a lot that we can learn from how people behave online. So I spend about half my time now trying to educate people around doing what we call search listening. So that's where these webinars have come from. And yeah, really, really excited to speak to Ginny about using it for reputation specifically today.
Thank you, guys. Cool. Just a little reminder as well. We are all on Twitter, so our Twitter handles are just there on that last slide. But yeah, we've got a hashtag today, so it's search listening reputation, and that is in the bottom right hand corner of all of the slides, so you won't miss that one. You can tag us if you need to. We're at AnswerThePublic, Ginny is at SpinSucks, and Sophie is at Search Listening. Couple of house rules, so yeah, just make sure you share and ask lots of questions. That's all we're here for. Okay, so to kick things off then, the first question, it might seem like a bit of a new concept to use Search Insight for reputation management. I guess, you know, there's a lot of people out there that are thinking kind of that's what social listening is for. You know, you can just hop onto Twitter or Facebook and get an instant reaction about what people are saying about you, your brand or your organisation. But I guess this one is for Sophie to kick us off. Why is it that you value search listening as such an important part of the reputation puzzle?
Yeah, thank you. It's a really good question. And I guess as I've started speaking to people about the idea of search listening more and more, it's one of the things that I get often kind of get asked, you know, so well, what about social listening? Like, I'm used to doing that. What's this search listening thing you're talking about? And I always make it very, very clear. I still do social listening lots of the time for my clients, and I think it's a really useful source of insight in certain use cases. I would say, I think for me it's about understanding how people behave on social media, and therefore what sort of insights you might take from there versus how they behave in search and what sort of insights you might take from there. So I guess this is kind of what it comes down for me, is that you can hear what people are shouting about your brand on social media, but in search you get to understand what they really think. And I guess what I mean by that is shouting is a deliberate word in that, because I think a lot of the time on social media, I guess it's so publicly facing, right, that anything you're putting on social media, you want to be heard. You're shouting your opinion, your views, your voice, whether it's about a brand, a topic, whatever it's about. You're putting it out there because you want other people to hear it. And I guess with reputation, particularly around brands, even people, a lot of the time you're not happy if you're on social media and you're tweeting. You might be really upset about an experience you've had, something's not been handled very well, and I think it is a sort of default behavior for consumers now, is to jump on social media and shout.
Right. Yeah.
They know that they might get some attention and their issue might be resolved. So if you flip that then and look at search, what's interesting for me there is that search is not publicly facing, right? It's I guess you're almost having a conversation with Google when you search. But there's a really interesting behavior for me, which is that I think if you've got someone on social media voicing their opinion and saying, I read this thing, I saw this thing happened, this brand did X, if other people are influenced by that post on social media, the place that they will go in the kind of pursuit of truth, if you like, is going to be search. So if I jump in to just show you what I mean with that. I always explore stuff. I'm going to use AnswerThePublic today because it's a tool that I use a lot of the time, but also just Google's regular suggestions, which is, I mean, it's the same data as AnswerThePublic. AnswerThePublic just kind of scrapes it and automates it for you. But things like, so this is an interesting, do use child labour. And if I go back and put a space here, you'll see these are all brands that people somewhere have got some sort of idea that these brands use child labour. And it may be that people were talking about it on social media, but the thing that they've done is that they've come to Google. Google is suggesting these terms because it's seen other people search them. And so someone's come to Google and gone, do Primark use child labour, do Nike, do Adidas, etc., etc. So, you know, I've not put in any brands there. I'm just looking at the topic of child labour, but it works with anything else. So if I do like palm oil, which is obviously quite a contentious ingredient in a lot of food these days. So again, we get a whole list of, and not even food there, so Body Shop obviously,
wow, yeah,
cosmetics, things like that. So yeah. This is one thing that I really like to do, which is kind of making use of what I call like a wild card in Google Suggests. So you can look at topics that you know might be contentious or issues that might have happened and go back and put a space, and then you start to see the brands that people are associating with them, which is really, really interesting for me. And then the other
poor
point,
Nestle and poor Nike on both of
I know
those.
I know but you say for them, right? But I guess the interesting thing is it's not necessarily true, but the fact that it's coming up in the suggestions means that
it's something people are searching.
And so then the other point here is that people don't just search for information or things that they want to buy. They tell Google what they're thinking. And I know in the example that I just showed you it was an informational search, right? It was people have heard a rumor and they're going to Google for clarity. But when I started getting more familiar with search data, I think this is one of the behaviors that really, really surprised me. And that's that as much as we've said search is a private conversation with Google. No one else can see. I mean, unless you've done something really bad and the police are coming and digging through your search history, no one is going to see what you're searching. It's just you and Google. So you can be super.
You should have a friend that deletes that for you.
Yeah. Okay. So one takeaway from this webinar: find that friend, make that.
Find your friend. You're arrested.
But so one thing that I find really interesting is, look at this. So I hate shopping. I don't hate shopping. I love shopping apps. So if you think about performing these searches, right?
With my wife, with my mom, with my girlfriend.
But it fascinates me, this behavior, that it's not someone looking for some information. They're telling Google, I hate this thing. And if we look at some of them, so the one that works for me, I'm in the UK, so I'll go, I hate shopping at Aldi, so one of the kind of low cost budget supermarkets, if you like. So not only, again, that's being suggested to people when they start typing things. So it's going to reinforce that thought that, maybe Aldi's not a very nice shopping experience. And we are, straying into the territory of sort of search marketing here, or like more content-based stuff. And for me, the really interesting things are the behavior. So I'm not going to dwell on this for too long, but actually someone's put that into Google. And I suppose my curiosity then is, well, why is someone putting that into Google? Because what are they hoping to find from that? And what they do find is, this is a news piece on a local news website in the UK. So Mum explains why you should never shop at Aldi. And then you get Trustpilot, which obviously actually holds quite a lot of sway, I think, for consumers who are looking for some confirmation about brand reputation. So interesting thing here is that I think, and it's a hunch, but I believe that people turn to Google and they tell it what they think. And I think sometimes they're looking for communities of people who feel the same way as them, and they know that by telling Google they'll get there, or they're looking for their beliefs to be confirmed. I suppose they want to know that it's not just them that feels this way. It's a really funny behavior. There's a quirk with it, and sometimes you'll see sometimes it's like a song lyric or a crossword clue or something, but it usually becomes apparent when it's that. But yeah, I would encourage everyone to have a play around with this and find those searches, because they're super curious. But yeah, people do not just search for information or to buy things. Actually, they are telling Google what they think. And because it's not being publicly broadcasted, you can be really confident that it is genuinely what they actually think, because they've got nothing to gain from someone else seeing that that's their opinion. So I think, yeah, going back to where I started, don't not do social listening, but search is a treasure trove of information, particularly around this kind of stuff. So make sure that you're using it.
Well, and I would say, Hannah, to just rain on your parade a little bit, I think the best thing about this is you can go in and you can look to see, what are people saying about your brand. So do it for yourself. Like, I hate brand. I like your brand, whatever it happens to be. And you can see the kinds of things that people are searching. And the other thing I would suggest is scroll down to the bottom to see the box that says people also ask, especially when you're doing it about your brand or about your competitors or whatever it happens to be. Yeah, the people also ask box, so that you can see exactly that. I mean, I made the joke about being able to read people's minds, but you are. This is amazing. And it starts to tell you, okay, are we well liked? Are we not? What is the perception? Has the sentiment changed and we'll talk a little bit about this some more in a bit, but if you're in the middle of a crisis, what are people saying? How are we handling things? As COVID-19 was starting to hit the US, especially, we kept getting emails from companies that said, in abundance of caution, and everyone was just like, oh my gosh, has everybody taken the same PR class in terms of messaging on this? So pay attention to those kinds of things. What is it that it's telling you, and what kinds of things what kinds of trends can you take away from it?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Just before we go on to the next question, I'm just going to ask, can anyone that has questions, would you mind putting them into the Q&A function rather than the chat, please, just because it's easier to save and respond to them kind of live if you do it in that way. That'd be great. Cool. Okay. So practically speaking then, what are the kind of steps and processes people should follow to be able to both kind of get a better understanding of and monitor their reputation online? I guess that one's for Ginny.
Well, I will tell you that if COVID-19 has taught us anything, it's that we never really had control of what we thought we did. And this has actually been really very personally challenging for me, because I'm very type A and I like to be in control of everything. And the only thing I can control right now is how clean my house is. That's it. That's the only thing I can control. But it also speaks to the lack of control that we have as organizations. Of course, we've always had this perception that we have control of what people say or how they feel about us or whether or not they like working with us. But that's actually further from the truth because we've never actually had control. And one of the things I like to point to is it used to be that if somebody were upset, they would maybe tell their friends and family or their next door neighbor, or if they were really upset, they'd send a letter to the CEO. But today they can tell everybody. And I mean, certainly, you know, what Sophie was talking about in terms of shouting it on social, we see that really consistently all the time. But also this is really interesting from a search perspective. So now you can actually see, are people living and feeling the way that we want them to? And they're the ones that are in control of our brand. We're not in control of this. In fact, today's consumers do not want to be told what to think about a brand. They want to be able to tell the brand what they think. And so this is what search listening does for you, is they are telling you what they think. They are telling you exactly what they think. And so when you combine this with your social listening, you're able to go, okay, yes, it matches what we want them to feel and think, or holy cow, this is completely different than what we expected. And how do we fill that gap? So you have to bridge that gap between what they actually think and feel about you and what you want them to.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ginny. And then Sophie, I wonder if you could sort of run through the actual steps that can be taken from a search listening perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are completely new to this world of social listening, search listening, then the tool that I use the most for this, and obviously Hannah is here representing AnswerThePublic, who are the guys who put this on. So I guess you're here, you may be a user of AnswerThePublic already, and if not, I definitely suggest that you have a go using AnswerThePublic. What AnswerThePublic does is basically, in the examples that I was showing you previously, where I was typing things into Google and things were coming up as suggestions, AnswerThePublic scrapes all of those suggestions en masse. So it just massively speeds up your work and allows you to run loads and loads of different searches you know, in one go. So I mean, the most simple thing and the thing that you absolutely should be doing if you are interested in your brand's reputation, which I hope if you're on this webinar that you are, is jumping into AnswerThePublic and just searching for your brand. So I've done that here just looking at Amazon. It's a brand that I think most of us will know. And all you do is you type in your brand, and then actually AnswerThePublic will generate all of these wheels. And what this is if I'd gone into Google and searched will Amazon, and you can see all the different suggestions that come up when I do that. And so it's got loads of different kind of shortcut words to help you do that. Just a bit of usability. The darker the green dot, the higher up in the suggestions that it comes from Google. So that means that it's particularly being searched for right now. It's kind of, you look at it as like a trending type thing. So at the moment, will Amazon close, which is obviously relevant to everything that's going on right now. But you'll get 3 different wheels doing that. And I think actually, if you've never done this before, then step 1 would be to go into AnswerThePublic and just run your brand through it and really get familiar with everything that's on here. So you'll get all of the different wheels that have different things, and then you get the full alphabet. So it's like you've gone Amazon A, Amazon B, Amazon C, whatever it is, all the way through. So there's an absolute treasure trove of information in there. One thing I would say is, much like social listening, so social listening, whenever you do it, you are obviously capturing conversations up to that moment in time, and this is really similar. So search listening, AnswerThePublic data is just that moment in time. If some big news story broke later on today, I don't know what news story could break that's going to trump coronavirus right now, but if, you know, normal times, if something had, then and tied to your brand, then you would expect searches around your brand to change, and so you would want to run the report again to see how that search behavior has changed. There's some really nice things coming up in AnswerThePublic. So already pro users, so I am logged in as a pro user, so I should say there's a free version that anyone can use, and then there's a pro version with some enhanced features, allows you to compare data between 2 different sets. And here's your little sneak preview for any of you who is an AnswerThePublic user. A feature that's going to be launching specifically for pro users in the coming months, not sure when, but I know it's getting there, it's really close to being done, is actual email alerts for this, which for me, I work in an agency and I am trying to, you know, understand behavior around lots of different brands at any given day. I don't necessarily have time to be jumping into Answer the Public and running these reports on a daily basis, but what I have set up is these alerts through Answer the Public. So actually I'm running, so I work with a gym brand in the UK, and so I'm interested in what people are searching around gyms. I've got it on their brand term as well, but what I'm now getting on a daily basis is these emails which alert me to new changes in search behaviour, which is really cool because it means I don't have to jump into Answer the Public and kind of look for all that information. And you can see things coming through like how gyms will change, which for me is a really, really important, interesting search term right now, given everything that's going on. It's, you know, that's what's top of mind for people. So actually, can I be helping them understand how gyms are going to change?
What I would Sophie, say, how often do you get this? Is it daily or how is it?
Yeah, so I'm getting it daily at the moment. I think perhaps when it launches, speaking to the guys that Answer the Public at the moment in terms of how frequently is right for people, because it's a lot of data that's coming through. So it may be that it's weekly or monthly when it actually gets launched. But either way, I think it's going to be a real game changer for people in terms of being sort of served insight up on a plate, if you like, rather than having to really dig into it.
Yeah, that's great.
It's probably worth just saying, actually, while we're on this, that anyone that's got a pro account of Answer the Public, because this is a pro tool, please get in touch with us, because we'd like you guys to actually try it out and give us feedback. That'd be great. So yeah, just get in touch with me on Twitter, or you can message me. I'm Hannah at answerthepublic.com. It'd be great to get loads of you trying this out.
And the other thing I should just flag is that at the moment, so this is very, very much like early beta. So, you know, it may not look exactly like this when it launches, but at the moment it talks about new questions. And that just means it's not saying that no one has ever searched this before and all of a sudden they have. But if you think of like the suggestions that Google serves up as kind of a top 10, it means that they're back in the top 10. So they're relevant now and you should probably be acting on them as a brand. One other thing that I'll just flag that I like to jump into is just one of the branches in Answer the Public that particularly coming at this with a reputation point of view, that I find consistently valuable is the like branch, which you will find on the comparisons wheel. So this one here, so in terms of, and you know, I would say the whole comparison wheel, to be honest. So in terms of your reputation and I suppose your competitive set, working with clients a lot of the time, I find it really interesting that you say to them, so who are your key competitors? And they have this set of other businesses who are like them in their head that they're competitive with, right? And actually you look in Answer the Public, and sometimes it will tie up with that, but actually you start to see, looking at the comparisons branch, you see Amazon or eBay. I don't know whether Amazon would consider eBay a competitor, but
probably not.
No, but the point is that actual real people do, and they're searching for it. In fact, it's the top or search. So it's right now, it's the biggest or search that you're seeing around Amazon. So that's really, really interesting to me. And here, like Amazon versus Walmart as well. I don't know whether, you know, it's online, offline. I don't know how much they would think that overlaps. So the whole comparison wheel is really, really useful, but like becomes really, really interesting for me. I will just jump into the example with Gucci as well, very different to Amazon. But the thing I like here, so this is where I would be intrigued by the like branch. So we see Gucci like belt, like trainers. So there's, you know, Gucci obviously is a luxury brand, and so it's got a whole kind of aspirational element built into it. So this is potentially people who are saying, I really like Gucci, that's what I want. I can't quite get there at the moment for whatever reason, perhaps money, but they know that they want something like it, and so they're turning to Google and they're saying something like Gucci. And what I would do with this is knowing as Gucci that people aspire to have these items, so it's telling us, you know, tights, trainers, belts, loafers, whatever. I would make sure that I was running loafers as a search term, or any of those products in Answer the Public as well. So I think the point is, don't always start with your brand, but think about the things that you sell at a very generic level. And if you go back to that like branch, but looking at it from a product point of view, I would want to know that I am consistently here. So we've run loafers. So this is saying loafers like, and here you can see loafers like Gucci. So the other way around, right? So people starting with the product, but what you get here on this like branch for me is it's kind of the benchmark aspiration set, if you like, around, and you can do that with any given product. I do it with food things, with fashion things, all sorts. But what you always get, if you start with the product and look at the like branch, you get this really nice set of people that are the aspirational top of the class, if you like, brands for that product. And it's an interesting measurement, you know, a very, very soft KPI, but I think it's an interesting measurement piece to just look at that and say, you know, we want to be famous for loafers. Do people aspire to have loafers like ours?
And I would even say, I mean, this is a little bit beyond reputation, but having access to this, and as Gucci that people want to have something like your loafers or your scarves, maybe there's a lower end product that you create that still has the Gucci stamp but isn't quite as expensive.
Yeah,
and I mean, certainly not a product developer by any stretch of the imagination, but there are things that you can take from this beyond reputation for sure.
Absolutely. I think it's really important that the data gets fed through this kind of data gets fed through to all parts of a business, because product developers should be using
great.
There's a question here, actually, just while we're on this point. A couple of people have asked this. What do you recommend for companies that are kind of not as big as some of these brands and perhaps are kind of less well known about? How should they go about this kind of thing? Is it the same process?
Yeah, same process. I mean, you would expect your Answer the Public wheels to be less populated because there will be less, searches about you because you are less known, but there may still be some searches about you and you would want to know what they are. And then also, I think if you start with the product, what you will be getting around that is a sense of the questions people have around that type of product, and the competitors within that as well. So if your brand's not big enough to look at it, I would still look at it from a product point of view or service, whatever it is that you do, because there's definitely still insight that you can take. And actually keep checking, because as you grow as a brand, then hopefully you would start to see that wheel being populated more and more as well. So that's probably another sort of measurement point to look at in terms of, is there more conversation about us within search?
And you can also do industry. Pay attention to what's happening in the industry and pay attention to what's happening with your competitors too, because that will give you a really good understanding of where you should be and where you can grow.
Definitely.
That's going to be my next question, actually. So,
I keep raining on your parade. Almost like I knew it was coming.
All good. But yeah, no, so I guess this is one for both of you. So does the same process then work for competitors? We've talked about kind of smaller companies there that aren't those kind of big brands, but how is it that you can kind of make sure that you're tracking what's happening in your competitors' world, and how can people kind of use that information to stay ahead of the game?
So I could go with that, but yeah, I mean, a very short answer to this question really is just that yes, absolutely. I think one of the beauties of search data and being able to access it with tools like Answer the Public is that this is all publicly available data, right? In fact, you don't even need to use Answer the Public. I would suggest that you do, because it's definitely going to drive efficiencies and speed up your work and get you a load of data much quicker. But you can do what I was doing earlier in terms of just going into Google Suggests, and you will be able to access sort of thoughts and feelings and perceptions and questions and searches around any brand, any topic that you like. It's all publicly available and instantly available and free. It ticks all the boxes for me. But yeah, being able to look at competitor data as well is definitely a huge strength of this. And yes, the same process is exactly the same.
And it's very nice to be able to say to your executive or to your clients, look at this. And then they think you're magic, and that's fun. Don't give away your secrets.
Just be the magic producer.
Right. Magic producer.
Okay, cool. So COVID-19, we need to ask a question about that. So it's obviously been a massive challenge for individuals, brands and organisations when it comes to their reputation. I'm sure we can all think of examples where, businesses have fared really well and perhaps not so well at this time. So what can search listening teach us about how to respond to crises online?
So for me, again, I've got some examples to show you, but here's a brand who haven't done terribly well right now in terms of their communications. And I suppose, I can answer this question really, really simply, which is I've talked about the need to constantly check this data, or to check it on a regular basis, right? Because perceptions shift all the time because of things that are happening. And no, I don't think any time ever more so than right now. There's a different thing happening every day. Someone else is saying something ridiculous. A brand is doing a silly thing, or actually, to give people credit, some brands are doing some really great things as well. It's not all negative. I'm not going to be negative Nancy. So Virgin Atlantic, the interesting thing here, again, just running their brand name through here, and you start to see, again, if we look at the darker green dots, because that's what's kind of top of mind right now, What Virgin Atlantic flights are cancelled? Are they going to go bust? Are they offering refunds? All this sort of thing. I think even down here, are Virgin Atlantic in trouble? So the point is, these are all searches that are happening right now. So I don't think there's anything here about changing your behaviour, but it's recognising that at a time of crisis, it's even more important that you're checking in with this sort of stuff. And actually, while the alerts function hasn't launched right now, something that you can be doing is, again, if you're a pro user, you'll have this box at the top which says compare data. So that can show you, so I ran a search for Virgin Atlantic on April the 23rd versus May the 20th. And if I compare those two dates, it just really, really quickly highlights all of the new searches for me. So between those two sort of data sets, so can Virgin Atlantic survive? Are they actually flying? Are they in trouble? Straight away, I'm seeing what's going on here. And actually, if at a time of crisis, if you're doing this on a daily basis, you can really quickly start seeing what are the things that are happening, what are the questions that people have. And the other point I'd make is just that this isn't applicable only to brands. I think if we stay with the Virgin Atlantic example but look at a personality behind it, Richard Branson has not come out of all of this unscathed, and he is not detached from the brand. I think a lot of people would identify the two completely, wholeheartly. So again, you see questions like, will Richard Branson get a bailout? What else did we have?
What I really like about this is even the comparison from a reputation standpoint and seeing the difference. So you can see, people a month ago weren't so concerned that they weren't going to fly again, and now they are. So how do we address that as communicators or marketers, whatever it happens to be? How do we address that in our communications?
Absolutely. And I think this one's the one that really gets me, and I think it's been there for a long time. But why Richard Branson sues the NHS? And actually, it's an interesting point. I think if you look at where stuff comes up on the branches, it's not something that will come through in the comparisons, but it's something you can be keeping an eye of. Is where does that come? So it's always been a bone of contention for British people that Richard Branson sued the NHS. But actually now in this time of crisis, we can see it's the top why suggestion around Richard Branson. And it may be that actually before all this went on, people were more interested in why he was a good leader and there was more positive sentiment about him. But actually right now, stuff has shifted such that the biggest sort of preoccupation around why Richard Branson is a negative one. And yeah, that's really important to know and to be able to act on. So yeah, I mean, that's how you'd be spotting stuff and using it at a time of crisis. I think Ginny probably has got lots of wisdom in terms of what you actually would do with the insight once you're getting it, particularly right now.
Yeah, great. I guess so. Yeah, over to you then, Ginny. I know you've
yeah. I mean, this is pretty incredible to be able to see because, like Sophie said at the very beginning, we've always been paying attention to what people are shouting at us in social, but being able. Sorry.
Nice musical interlude.
People being able to see, or us being able to see, why Richard Branson is a good leader versus why he's suing the NHS. This is really good data to have, and it helps us address the kinds of things that we communicate. So I sort of have, I think it's 7 steps in what you should be thinking about and doing as you're doing both your search and social listening. So the number 1 is be vigilant, and not just in staying consistent to your brand, but be vigilant in listening. And, as Sophie showed you, now you don't have to go in and do your Google searches every day. You don't have to go into AnswerThePublic every day and do your searches, but you can get those alerts so that they come into your inbox and you can see the difference between yesterday and today. You can see the difference between 6 months ago and today, or last month and today, and start to understand whether or not the sentiment has changed. So be vigilant in that and make sure that this is one of the first things that you're doing across the board, no matter what kind of communication you're doing, no matter what kind of social media you're doing, no matter what kind of content marketing you're doing. The second one is be honest. And, it's funny, and especially because of social, we see more what I'll put in quotes crisis, which aren't really crisis, but put companies in hot water for 24 to 48 hours because of social media. And it's interesting to watch how many companies say I'm sorry and how many do not. I'm sorry are the 2 best words in the English language. And I think this works across the board for relationships at home and for relationships at work. When you say I'm sorry, here's what happened and here's what we're doing about it, it works incredibly well. So just be honest and just say, I'm sorry. The third one is be open. And this is really challenging because it's very hard for us to keep open minds, and it's very hard for us not to get defensive because we're human beings. And when somebody is attacking us or our brand or our colleagues or our executives or our clients, it's really hard for us to take a step back and go, okay, hang on a second. All of a sudden, Richard Branson went from being a great leader to why the heck is he suing the NHS? So what's the difference there, and how do we have to address that? Being active. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be all places, right? So if your social listening is showing you that everybody's having conversations about you on Twitter, you probably should be on Twitter. But if the conversations are showing up in other places, maybe they're in Reddit or they're in other forums, industry forums, be active in those places. You don't have to be on all the social networks. You don't have to be all places for all people, but you do have to be active in the places where those conversations are happening already. The next one is be consistent. So keep everyone on the same page. And what this means, so what we've talked about is you don't have control of your brand, your customer does. And we can now say, okay, do our values and our morals and our messaging and the things that we want people to think and feel about our brand, do they match what's actually happening? And search listening allows us to see that, right? And Sophie's done a really great job of showing you how to see that. So if they don't match, how do we bridge that gap? And how are we consistent in everything that we do? So a lot of organizations will have people out there talking to, they'll be speaking, or they will be at a networking event, or they used to be anyway. Maybe they're at a virtual event and they're talking about your brand. Is everybody saying the same thing? So you have to have that consistency, because if you don't, you'll never be able to bridge that gap. And customers around the globe will think different things at different times, and it will never be consistent. So that starts internally. You have to be consistent. Be creative. And I love this one. I mean, I can think of some really great examples of creative accounts. Wendy's is a great example of, I think they're great on Twitter. And I think Moon Pie is great on Twitter as well. But one of my favorite examples is a couple of years ago, there was a sandwich shop in Washington, D.C., and some guy left a review that one of their sandwiches was terrible. And so they left a response, and they started using that quote on Twitter. And I think they even did it on Instagram, where they did some cards and things that said, and I have to look up his name, "Come and try our sandwich," whatever the name of it was. At DGento thinks it's disgusting. Come and see what you think. So you can have some fun with it. You don't have to be super serious and buttoned down or buttoned up, or you can have some fun with it and be creative. And then the last thing is be proud. And this goes back to being consistent. It goes back to making sure that your values and your vision and your morals and everything that you believe in is permeating throughout the organization, that it fits your culture, that it fits everything that you're doing from a communication standpoint. And then when you bring in your search listening, and you can start to see, oh my gosh, the things that we're doing are permeating externally, and our customers do feel that way. You have the ability to see that. And you also have the ability to figure out if that has changed or not.
Awesome. They were great tips. Thank you very much, Ginny. That's actually all we've got time for today, but we have got lots of questions. So yeah, I think we've got about 20 minutes or so for questions. So if we just start running through those, there's been a lot of questions about how you can find information about kind of the data behind the searches. So an example here with the Google suggestions, is there a way we can export this data? For example, how many people are searching for Nike, Primark, etc., associated with child labour? So that was an example you mentioned earlier on in the webinar, Sophie.
Yeah, so the quickest, working with like Answer the Public as a tool, and it may be a question that's cropped up because I feel like it does every time we talk about it. You get people saying, how do I know how many searches there are behind this thing? And the first thing I would always say, if you look at the Answer the Public YouTube channel, I've done a video on this in terms of just explaining why we don't give volumes on Answer the Public data, and it's not our fault, it's Google's fault, passing the buck. But so the data that we're taking in Answer the Public is directly from Google's suggestions. The only keyword volume, i.e. like how many people are performing that search, data that Google provides to marketers full stop, is through its keyword planning tool. And its keyword planning tool is set up typically for people who are buying advertising. So it's great if you want to understand how many people are looking at red shoes, because it can sell you an advert based on that. But if you're looking at like, do Nike use child labor, it's not going to be so great. And typically we find that if you look at the data for those sorts of terms in the keyword planner, it will say 0 or 10 searches a month. We know that's not true because actually there's billions of people searching every day in Google, and the fact that Google is serving it up as a top suggestion means that it's seen lots of other people perform the search. So you know that it's more than 10 people performing it. So the one thing that I would say that you can do is going into Google Trends. So trends.google.co.uk, because I'm in the UK, but .com, wherever you are. And in fact, you can look at whatever location you like once you're in the tool. So then you would just type in do Nike use. So what this will give you is not a volume view of the data, but it will give you, I think the question talked about comparisons. Okay, so here it says you don't have enough data, and this will happen quite a lot again with Answer the Public terms, because they're called kind of long tail, so that, you know, it might not be that people are performing that exact search, they're searching in a similar way. If we try, okay, so if I change the wording slightly, I can get something around that, and then you might want to compare. So what I can see here is just at a glance in the UK, and you can toggle all of these things here, but in the UK over the last 12 months, there have been more searches, and this shows you sort of seasonality, but this bar chart here actually suggests that there's no one searching for that. So we get lots of questions about the data, and it's really tricky to do just because Google doesn't give us like volumes, but Trends gives you a chance to compare, although you may need to pair the search terms that you're looking at back a little bit to be more sort of generic, less question-y, sentencey. So play around with whatever you're interested in Trends, because you can compare. And beyond that, yeah, I'm afraid because Google is so limited in giving the data, it is just a case of looking at those green dots within the reports to see what's the most prominent. And I would suggest, you know, if you ran a report for Adidas and you ran a report for Nike, actually if the child labor point was like the top suggestion in one, but maybe like midway through for the other brand, then you're getting a sense of actually there's more things that people are curious about around Nike, rather than for Adidas it's the top thing that people are curious about. So you can benchmark in terms of position rather than actual volume, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Sophie. Okay, I think this one is a really good one for you, Jenny, actually. So this is kind of a comment. It'd be great to see what you think about this. Someone has said that some people do, in fact, want to be told what to think. We see that with influencers and movie stars who endorse something, and then lots of people suddenly start thinking that that brand is cool by virtue, and then suddenly buying it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the point is that we don't really have control, and we can certainly try to, just 1 minute, please. Yeah, no, 1 minute, please. We really try to mold the perception, but if it doesn't match, so let's say we buy a watch because we saw Tiger Woods has one. Does it match if it breaks a month later, it doesn't match the perception that we have that Tiger Woods permeated because of that. So we can certainly try to mold it. We can certainly try to, and that's the whole point of marketing communications, is getting people to understand what it is that we stand for. But the point is that we don't control it. So if the experience that a consumer has does not match what the influencer or the celebrity or even the brand is saying, that's where you start to have trouble. And I think that's where search listening comes in too, where it's, okay, I bought this watch because Tiger Woods is out there talking about it and, you know, telling everybody to buy one, but it broke 30 days in and I'm unhappy about this. So, you know, maybe certainly they're saying that on social, but maybe there's somebody else is searching Tiger Woods watch and seeing some of that negative commentary, and then they don't buy it. So certainly, yes, our jobs as marketing and communications professionals is to mold that perception and to use influencers and celebrities to help us do that in some cases. But if it doesn't match, then it doesn't, and we're not the ones who get to control that.
Okay, great. So there's an interesting question here. Someone's asking about whether you can use the same approach if you're thinking about a particular industry rather than a brand. Is it the same process that you guys have been talking to today, if you're kind of trying to gain insights around your industry and sort of make sure your reputation matches up to the particular industry that it's in?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the beauty of Answer the Public, is that you can put anything you like into it, into the search box on the homepage or into Google suggestions. You can put a topic, you can put an industry, you can put a brand, you can put a product, you can put a service, you can put a person, whatever it is that you want to put in. And yeah, it's the same process. I think the interesting thing there is that, yes, you can start with an industry or a topic, and then what you get back will be, there will always, I say always, 90% of the time be a mixture of brands and more informational based searches or product based searches. So the report you get back from Answer the Public will be a mixture of all sorts of different areas that you can explore, but you can be completely open. And actually what I would suggest typically is don't go to Answer the Public and just put your brand name in. I think it's a really good practice to get into, is to put your brand name in, put a competitor in, put a product in, and put your industry in, and actually look at the whole bundle, if you like. I think, particularly once you're a pro user, you can run as many searches as you like in Answer the Public. So I think if you run a risk if you just go in and put one thing in, of only getting to see the conversation on that specific thing. So if you can, I mean that even down to as much as how you phrase something. So a tip I always give people would be like, if you worked with an airline, you might put the name of your airline in there, and then you might want to explore things like my flight, because if someone's bought something from you and then it's experiencing a problem, they're going to be talking about their flight, right? They own the flight at that point. So my flight would be an interesting one, but then it might be flights you might look at generically, and then you might put competitors in. And I think the other point is if you're a brand name that people often misspell, or as much as I think Julie said it really, really well earlier, but we want to control a perception of a brand, but even down to how that brand is spelt. If your brand's difficult, or I work with brands where it's two words merged into one, and officially all comms that we do for them, it's one word, but consumers spell it two words, and that's what they do, right? You can't change that. But if that's the case, then I would, if you're working for that brand, then in Answer the Public, run both ways. Run the brand that as you want it to be seen, but also recognize how people see it or spell it, and run that as well. So as many different varied inputs, but always thinking about how would a real person, I say a real person, we're all real people, how do we search for that? And I think that's another interesting point. We're marketers and comms professionals, but we're also human beings, right? We interact with brands, and we're performing these searches on a daily basis. So try and step out of your work shoes and think, if I had an issue with that brand, what would I be searching, and what are some of the sort of keywords that you can use from that?
Cool, great. Okay, just to mention, I mentioned this earlier on in the webinar, there's lots of questions coming in specifically about how to do kind of different things in Answer the Public itself. We have got a tutorial video on our YouTube channel to help out with that one. So it's youtube.com/c/Answer the Public, and we will put that in the follow-up notes. So that'll just take you through, the entire process of kind of using Answer the Public. So someone was asking if there is a search listening framework or a process that they could follow that can then kind of be combined with social listening and this kind of proactive brand management we've talking about. Is there something that people could use that they could then kind of share with their internal teams or stakeholders?
So I guess a very good question, and probably a good kick up the bum for me to do something like that, because
I was just thinking the same thing. Oh, we should do that.
There is, if you go on searchlistening.com and look in the Academy section, there are some free downloads. So things that we have got at the moment are things like there's a framework and some questions to prompt you around how you're using search listening versus social listening. So that might be a useful asset. There's also, I've recently created something that I guess is a bit of a guide to try and help people assess how sophisticated their use of search listening is. So I think a lot of people are quite familiar with using search data and then thinking, right, I'll plan some content off the back of it. But Ginny made the point earlier, you can take this right through to product developers within your business as well. And I think one of the things I would love to see is businesses across the, like, you know, the whole, every division within a business making use of search data, because it is genuinely reading the minds of people, and everyone in a business should be using it. So I've got some free worksheets that will help you do things like that. But no, thank you, good prompt, and I will look at creating some sort of worksheet that you guys can download for search listening for reputation. And equally, if there's anything else, you know, I genuinely am passionate about this and would love to help people do search listening more and better. So if there is anything else that you would love to see created, then give me a shout and I'll see what I can do.
And I'll also toot your horn, because I just looked at your academy, and a couple of questions that we've gotten is in terms of how to use, you know, the Answer the Public, I guess, infographics or graphic, whatever you want to call it. And you have a free download in here too for that.
Yeah.
So people go there, searchlistening.com/academy. I can tell you that.
Thank you.
Got a really nice comment here, actually. It says, by the way, you ladies are doing great. As a mum, I admire how difficult it is to handle working from home.
Yeah, big props to Ginny.
I know we've all been having to kind of work around. We're all in lockdown at the moment. So yeah, we're kind of running these webinars from our homes. So it can be a bit of fun. It's all good. Glad that you're enjoying it. Someone's asking here about how they can sort of understand emotions associated with a product or brand. I guess that could be for either of you guys to answer.
Say it again. I don't.
So how can you understand the emotions associated with a product or brand? And I think maybe Sophie actually touched on this earlier on. Perhaps this person wasn't there for the start of the webinar, but you were talking about searching around. Yeah,
so I mean, you can look at in Google Suggests, I would suggest that you look at the sort of I hate and I love, and really deliberately explore the emotions and see what comes up with your brand. I think the other thing that you can do, which I will just jump back into Answer the Public. So if you go back to the Amazon example that I showed you, you can download any of these reports. I actually think I saw it in some question that someone had earlier in the comments, but any of the wheels, they're really nice visuals, but I always say I'm not a big sort of a spreadsheet person, but I appreciate that some people are. So there's the option to look at it as a data view so that you can see a list, but equally you can download anything into a CSV. And I think once you've got it into a CSV format, you can start applying, I think the question is alluding to some sort of sentiment analysis, which is notoriously difficult, particularly on social media, given that human beings and the English language is very curious in as much as we use weird words that don't mean what we think they mean in terms of sentiment. But if you can download a CSV, then you can start doing, I guess, kind of your own custom sentiment analysis, in that you might search and tag a whole load of phrases up. You know, if you find hate 20 times, you can, I have done that for brands before actually, is download the CSV and then apply kind of custom and tagging to all the different search terms, so that I can then get to a place where I can say, well, of all the terms that I'm getting in my Answer the Public report, 20% have some sort of positivity about them, 10% are negative, and then it might be that 70% is completely ambiguous and doesn't give you that sentiment analysis. But you know, here I can see Amazon is bad. I would probably tag that up as negative sentiment.
Probably.
So yeah, you can do that. That's what I would probably suggest there. Download the CSV and then run your own custom sentiment analysis.
Okay, great. Okay, so we've got lots of people asking about how the data can be accessed for a particular geography, and also across other dimensions like demographics as well.
Yeah, if only. So you used to be, I used to be a big fan of anyone who has used Hitwise previously. They used to have a tool called Audience View, which captured its own data, search data and demographic data, and you could explore the two. Obviously, everyone remained anonymous, but you could look at if certain demographics searched more in a certain way. That was a dream. Read up on the whole demise of JumpShot if you're not aware of all of that sort of thing, but JumpShot closed down, and that's where that data was coming from, and there isn't anything that does that at the moment, unfortunately. So demographics is out, I'm afraid, but location data, if you go into Answer the Public, you'll see these toggles here. So mine, I'm in the UK speaking English, so that is my default, but there's a whole load of different locations that you can look at. and languages as well. So you can do that to your heart's content. And Google Trends, which I mentioned earlier, obviously you can start to, I can't get onto the tab because the doing webinars, like the technology, the things that come up, there we are. You can toggle your location here as well. So there are definitely tools that help you at a kind of location level. The other thing I should say is that if you're ever looking in Google suggestions, so this kind of stuff, make sure that you're in an incognito browser or an anonymized.
Oh, yeah, smart.
Otherwise you will be skewed by your own searches, and then you'll be thinking everyone thinks the same as you. But you can do some, some clever things with VPNs and proxies if you want to make Google think that you're in a different location and see what the suggestions would look like in a different location as well.
Excellent. Okay, thanks, Sophie, for that. This is an interesting question, actually. Do you think people should be tracking reputation on a daily basis, or sort of how frequently should people be doing this in order to get a sort of deep understanding of how people think and feel about their brand?
I mean, at the very least, should be monthly. And I really like that the email alerts are coming, because it allows you to have the daily access if something changes and you're not having to go in there every day. But I would, how I would do it, and this is what we do for most of our clients, is I would base it on when you send reports either to your executive team or to clients. Most of us do them monthly, and I think that's probably fair, unless there's something brewing like COVID-19. What were people saying about the brand right before, for the US, right before the 1st of March, and what are we saying? What are people saying now? I would do that comparison, but I don't think you have to do it every day, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, but no less than monthly, I would say.
Cool. Okay, great. Thank you. Mentioned this earlier, but lots of questions coming through about practically sort of using Answer the Public. Please do check out our YouTube channel. And if you are interested in Pro, there's been questions about what features we have in Pro. We're not going to talk about that today, but you can literally just go to Answer the Public and click on Pro, and you will see all of the features that are included in the Pro subscription there. I think that's pretty much all we've got time for today.
I did see one question that asked if you could please get rid of the creepy guy on the homepage. And I disagree. I think it's amazing. Totally creepy and amazing.
I agree. I think he's creepy, right? But everyone has an opinion on him, and that's a good thing.
Yes. I think it's great, because it does. I mean, it goes back to the point that we've made, which is, what people think and feel about your brand. And for sure, it makes you feel something.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sophie and Ginny, once again, for your time today. You've been absolutely brilliant. We mentioned earlier on that we're using the hashtag today, and that hashtag is search listening reputation. If you've got any questions, or there's anything that you want to share from today's webinar, that'd be great. Please use that. Just as a reminder, we're doing these webinars every month. So they are usually on the last Wednesday of the month. This one was a bit of an exception because we just needed to work around kind of lockdown challenges. But yeah, next month it'll be at 4:30, and we're going to be with the guys from BuzzSumo next month, and we're going to be focusing on content marketing. So the title of that webinar is How Observing Online Behaviour Can Help You Produce Better Content. So hopefully that will be super useful.
Love it.
Love it. If you signed up to today's webinar, you will be getting a recording. I saw lots of questions coming through, because I'm sure lots of people wanted to capture lots of those nuggets of insight that you got today. There is going to be a recording. It will be going on YouTube. You've all signed up, so you'll be getting that tomorrow afternoon, along with some notes from today's webinar too. And that will, so it'll be on YouTube, but it will also be on our website. We've got a webinars section in the top nav as well with all the recordings. And we will be sending out an invite to next month's webinar too tomorrow. So sign up to that one. It'll be really great. But yeah, I think that's all we've got time for. If you've got any feedback or comments about the webinars, please do get in touch. We'd love to hear what you think. And yeah, once again, a massive thank you, Ginny and Sophie, for your time today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, really good to speak with you, Ginny. And once again, I think massive props, because I think anyone who is juggling work and being a mum and a teacher at the moment is a superstar. So yeah, thank you.
It's a little frustrating, but thank you.
All good.
I definitely a superhero. Thank you so much. And yeah, catch you guys all again next month.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
See you
Bye-bye.
later. Bye.